Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. We've got something a little bit different for you today. We're joined by the Phoblographer's Editor-in-Chief, Chris Gampat. We're going to call this episode Gear with Gampat. We're going to talk about the best gear that's around right now, lenses, cameras, camera bags, accessories, studio lighting, you name it, we're going to talk about it. And it's going to be a fun show for you, so do stay tuned for the full hour. Before we get into it, guys, just a reminder that if you are enjoying the podcast, then please do subscribe and share. You can also hit a comment down below and hit a like as well. And the algorithm will bless us and let more people see this joyous, fun, photography-filled podcast. Right, let's get into it.
Hello, my name is Dan Jin. Welcome to Inside the Photographer's Mind. I am Daniel Jin, and I'm here to do Inside the Photographer's Mind. This is a weekly podcast we do with the Phoblographer. The Phoblographer. I'll stop.
I'm not taking that out.
But that's fine.
Everyone's seeing this.
Leave it in. Leave it in.
We were the familiar face. I'm sure everyone's seen this face. Chris Gampat. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry, I was taking a sip of Earl Grey Majestic tea. It's actually called Earl Grey Majestic. I'm doing well, though. It's been a pretty productive day. I cut my inbox down 3/4 of the way before I even got on this call with you. So, yeah.
That's great. And nice of you to show off that patented pinky of yours when you sip your Earl Grey.
You know, they say in certain cultures that it tastes better when you, like... so I just tend to do that with these, but it's kind of rude of me. The other day I actually did it in, like, a Japanese restaurant where I was, like, shoveling ramen into my face, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this so loud. But there were only, like, 2 other customers, and, like, the Japanese people didn't care that were serving me, so whatever.
Well, I'm British, so I've got this thing, you've probably never heard of it. It's called etiquette. And we, we're mindful of our fellow restaurateurs, if you will, and we try and eat as quietly as possible.
That's why you guys took everyone else's food and then brought it to Britain so that you could have everyone else's food without them, right?
Made it our own, some might say. And
Yes.
there's a camera. The camera sometimes goes. I'm using a Fujifilm X-T2, and it's trying to be modern. Sometimes it goes off, so I'm just going to switch that back on, Chris. But while I do that, we're gonna talk about gear today, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about gear, and everyone's going to get excited because people like gear and they want new gear, especially at this time of the season when it's almost Hanukkah and Christmas and any other celebration you can think of. So let me get this camera restarted, and then we'll start going in.
All right, sounds good, man. Yeah, so things are good otherwise. I mean, it is pretty crazy right now as far as seasons go. The industry is starting to look up a little bit. You know, COVID has put a damper on so many different things. Like, companies can't really get components, and there are semiconductor problems and all those kinds of issues. So it really is difficult to get a hold of cameras right now. And not only that, but lenses as well, too. And then there are issues with, like, shipping. Like, every manufacturer I talk about, they're like, yeah, no, like, our gear and our lenses and our bags, like, they're all just on shipping containers or sitting there in, like, you know, some sort of dock, and it's waiting for it all to come in and out. There's major infrastructure problems that, you know, we haven't really gotten around, and part of it is because the world isn't really vaccinated yet. But yeah, I mean, also it's been really fascinating to watch the camera prices and the lens prices go up. Wow, I said lens. Lens prices go up and down. Like, for example, you'll see, like, Fujifilm X100V go for, like, over $3,000 on eBay or secondhand or something like that. It's kind of crazy.
And so all this, I am trying to get the camera back on, guys. I do apologize.
I know, that's why I'm talking.
No, and I appreciate that. But you say there's a lot of gear stuck in cargo. Is that just because people are scared to move stuff around? Because, you know, there's a disease going around. Is it a disease, an illness, a sickness? COVID. Is that the main reason that everything's stuck around?
That's a major part of it. But also, those shipping docks they have new regulations or like new people working there, or sometimes they don't have staff. So everything has to be taken in a lot slower. And it's really difficult to be able to do all those things. And, some brands probably haven't seen their products really sold for a long time. Like, I talked to Tenba, and they have this problem. And I talked to Fujifilm and all these other brands, like Leica as well, too. They're like, man, we just don't have supply right now. We're sold out. We're constantly sold out. So it's a combination of other things as well, too. People are still being cautious. They're exploring other hobbies as a result. People needed to buy cameras to do stupid stuff like this. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, when you next speak to Fujifilm, can you ask them to do an update so my X-T2 doesn't constantly shut down? I mean, I love Fujifilm, big fan, addicted to it, some might say. But yeah, if it could stop going off my X-T2 when I'm using it as a webcam, that'd be swell.
Oh yeah, it'd also be smashing, as you guys say.
Smashing.
If they also did a really nice firmware update to the X Pro 3.
Yeah, that'd be smashing. So, in terms of gear, what have you got? What are you playing with at the moment? Keep it clean.
A lot. A lot. Well, first off, I'm being shot on a Leica SL2S right now with a 28mm f2 SL. It's got autofocus, so like if I move, it should be keeping me in focus, and it is.
Nice.
What else? I have a Canon Eos R5 over there that I was playing with recently. Good buddy of mine, King Kwan. We've interviewed him a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
He's a break dancer and like a photographer as well too, and also a pretty large TikTok star. He wanted to try out the R5 because he was considering buying it, so I brought it over with like the Elechrome 1 light that I really like. It's just it's really fascinating because they're trying to pitch it as like a competitor to a bunch of other things. Like the gold standard right now is the Profoto B10 in terms of lighting, for a whole bunch of different types of photographers.
Yeah.
And they're pitching it as like a competitor of that, and it's like half the price of it, but it doesn't really have the full performance. But there are teasers that there's another one coming later next year, so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Playing with that.
And this light, it's do you see that being targeted to the professional photographer or the keen enthusiast? Who's going to go for that? Someone more on a budget, maybe?
Both. Partially because of the budget, partially because of the innovative features. When you sit there and you look a lot of lights, first-party manufacturers, for a lot of them, like, it's not really worth it to buy them, versus, like, all the Chinese manufacturers that do everything cheaper and faster and more upgrades every year and all that kind of stuff. And then the retailers sometimes buy into those and stuff. But what the other brands really have that really makes them stand out is they have these other integrations built in via apps. Like Profoto has like the B10, and I could shoot it with my iPhone.
Nice.
And I can use Apple Pro RAW with that. So it's pretty fascinating and exciting, and I don't really think a lot of the other manufacturers are really pumped that much budget and money into it. So that's really what's making them stand out. And then other than that, I mean, I'm still, every now and again, I'll purposely go back to older cameras just to see like how they're holding up. So I've been playing with the EOS R again, which was the first RF camera that came out. And like, the more I play with it, the more I really like it in some ways, and the more I'm just like, oh, but it can't do everything. Like, some people were like, it doesn't have a joystick on there, it's got like that weird, stupid magic touch bar. And I'm like, if you just put it in like face and eye detection, if you're photographing people, you don't really necessarily need the joystick. If you're photographing landscapes, you don't really need the joystick. Where it becomes annoying for me personally is like, let's say I'm just like walking around, photo walking, and I want to photograph like a flower, and I see something like that, I'll probably have to move the focusing point like via the little D-pad, which is annoying.
Yeah.
If you're photographing like birds, it can be annoying, or animals or something like that. But just photographing like stagnant stuff, or like even parties, like people at a party, there's no problems. That camera, you don't really need a joystick. Like, it's fantastic in that way. And I've been advising Hillary as well too, because she's thinking about leaving Nikon really hard right now.
Okay.
And she's been playing with everything. She's probably got as many cameras in her apartment as I do. She's got stuff from Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm. She's probably got some Leica gear coming in soon. Yeah.
Just for those that don't know, Hillary is our gear editor, exceptionally good photographer, and absolutely knows her stuff. So if you want to check her articles out on the Phoblographer.com, I absolutely recommend, because she knows what she's talking about, and she's also helped me a lot when I've read her articles in terms of like making decisions and getting caught up to speed with what great gear's out there at the moment.
Yeah,
she's thinking
absolutely.
of going to Fujifilm as well.
Yeah, basically the entire staff is pretty much thinking about going to Fujifilm. Like, I have Fujifilm cameras, right?
Yeah.
You own it. Hillary's thinking about going to Fujifilm. I actually put in a request with her today, and then Brittany is thinking about going like medium format GFX Fujifilm.
Wow.
But she also really adores Leica, but so does Hillary, and so do I. So, yeah. I also have a thing for Canon. It's over there. Sony, it really depends. Like, I really mostly like them with like Tamron lenses attached.
Yeah.
My audio's coming in okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to check.
You sound beautiful.
No, wonderful.
That Queen's accent.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're both really leaning heavily towards Fujifilm. Brittany is leaning very close, I think, to the GFX 50S2, or she was considering the 100S. They're basically as big as her DSLR. She still owns a 5D Mark III. Mm-hmm. Hillary's still on a Nikon D850, I think, or D750. And they're like, yeah, no, like, these are every bit more as powerful as everything I want and have, and they're really enamored with the fact that they don't have to sit there and photo edit it for years. And I've been saying this for a while. Like, I think photo editing software has its place, right? I think it's wonderful. I've written pieces about this. I know I've had discussions with you about it.
Yeah.
I think that Photoshop is a great tool. I just don't necessarily think you necessarily create photographs with it. You can, you can retouch a little bit, and that's fine. Lightroom, you can mostly do the same thing, but I feel like photography, 75 to 80% of the image shouldn't really be edited heavily. There's nothing wrong with photo composites. I just think they're not photographs. I think they're composites.
And I think transparency is the main factor there. If as long as people are saying, "Hey, I've done quite a bit of work on this," I can appreciate it. Then I'll be like, "Oh, that's actually, that must have taken you quite a bit of time," and the end product is great, but when there's a lack of transparency and there's kind of a, hey, look at the photographs I make and I don't do much editing. It's like, no, don't lie to people,
Yeah.
Don't lie.
Yeah.
And I think, and this isn't necessarily an ad for Fujifilm, but because we are Fujifilm shooters, naturally we are going to, talk about them at times. But I've started using the film simulations, and I'm currently using Pro Neg High is the one that I'm using. And what I love about it is, and I have realized recently, I've been loading them up. I use Capture One. I think we all use Capture One.
Yeah.
And I've been realizing as I look at them, like, I do not actually need to do it. I just need to export this right away, Maybe a little bit of contrast and, a little bit of play with the exposure. But other than that, they're just dreamy. And one thing I want to ask you about is, in terms of the ergonomics and design of the camera, Nikon have kind of realized that there's a lust for kind of a digital camera with an analog feel. And they brought out, you'll be better placed to tell me the full name of this. It's the Nikon ZFC. Yeah. And I just wondered what your thoughts were about that. Are they going to kind of, Leica's got its own thing. Everyone said Fuji was a poor man's Leica, whatever. But so now Nikon and Fuji are kind of the affordable option, shall we say, although, still a pretty penny, or cent. Do you see them going head to head in this kind of like analog-esque design? And who do you, if that was the case, who do you see winning that? Could you imagine Fujifilm shooters transferring to Nikon, for example? for that reason?
Let's start in reverse direction. I don't see Fujifilm shooters transferring over to Nikon in the immediate future. It's a possibility if Nikon is smart and actually really, really leads into it. Because, like, the ZFC, it's an APS-C sensor, but everyone was expecting a full-frame camera. If they bought a full-frame camera out, and they really majorly improved the autofocus and stuff like that, I feel like then maybe there might have been some more Fuji shooters going over to Nikon in that way. I think it's wonderful, though, that they're doing it, because Canon never really cared about retro ergonomics, right? Let's go down the list.
Yeah.
Canon never cared about it. Nikon, obviously, we're talking about the Nikon ZFC.
Yeah.
Sony, semi-sorta cared about it with, like, the original A7 and the A7R, but, like, after that, I feel like they threw all retroness out the window. They just feel like evolutions in some ways of, like, Minolta Alpha DSLRs or SLRs in that case. Fujifilm we're talking about right now. Panasonic embraces the rangefinder feel with their rangefinder style cameras. Sorry, the retro feel. That's what I meant. The retro feel with their rangefinder style cameras. They don't embrace it with, like, the GH5, the GH6, and stuff like that. So, I've been wondering if Panasonic would be making a full-frame rangefinder-esque camera for years. Hopefully they will. If they do, I think that's also a competitor. Olympus is the next one. Olympus, you know, when the EM5 came out, it was really embracing, like, the retro ergonomics, and I don't really think that they have that very much anymore. I think they sort of lost their way in some ways like that. The Pen F obviously is still, like, very coveted and loved by a lot of photographers. It's not perfect, but if they came out with a Mark II version, I think a lot of photographers would be all for it. Leica obviously has retro ergonomics. Leica's just, like, another game in itself, man.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, is there even a competitor to Leica, really?
In some ways, yeah. In other ways, not really. Pentax only cares about DSLRs. You know, you give it enough time, that'll be retro in and of itself, let's be honest.
You know, you mentioned full frame and how maybe Fuji film shooters may transfer to Nikon if they brought out a full frame for the retro style camera. Do you think that the need and demand, because we're so digital now, for full frame is even there? I mean, you know, I've used crop sensor cameras in low light, and as long as the lighting's not too bad, you can still get some really nice photographs, clean images, a little bit of grain, but I like that. Do you think that the whole emphasis on full frame is going to start to disappear, mainly because people don't print their images as much as they used to?
Yes and no. I think that as AI becomes more prevalent in cameras, it might be the case. Do you really need full frame today? No. A lot of the work that I do is probably sometimes on, like, my Fujifilm cameras. But I will say that full frame does give you a look that's very nice, and people might want that. But, you know, Hillary did, like, a blind test with us, and we published it recently.
Yeah.
But even before then, you know, it was in our Facebook chat, and no one could really get anything correct. And then when I switched screens, I finally got it right. And to clarify, she put Canon versus Nikon versus Sony versus Fujifilm. Similar photos, all in one image merged together, trying to see how many of us could really tell the difference. None of us could. We all had our different tastes and all that stuff. I thought one way when I looked at everything on my computer, but then I switched over to my phone, and it looked completely different. And then, like, I thought I nailed it, if you remember.
Yeah.
I really pat myself on the back, and I was sure to add that in Hillary's article when I edited it. And I'm like, well. I'm gonna put that in. And she laughed, but I think it is a marketing thing. Especially if, like, people really just want to, like, appreciate the aesthetic. And we get away from spending hours in, I want to say, the digital darkroom, which is, just post-production software. And, you turn off all the lights in your office and you just sit there with like a screen like what's in front of me right now, just editing for hours.
Yeah.
If we move away from that, it's not really going to matter. I think what's going to matter instead is built-in camera LUTs and profiles. And some brands have really caught on to that. Panasonic has. They have a Cena-like profile that's really beautiful and makes your images look like Kodak movie film. Leica has it in some ways. The Fujifilm cameras totally have it.
Mm-hmm.
Sony cameras, you kind of have to really work with it. Nikon will do it to their JPEGs, not to their RAWs. Canon will do it to their RAWs, but you really have to work with it. Olympus has them as well, too. I went back to the Olympus art filters, and, like, some of them are good. Some of them are just meh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they need to do, like, a revamp. But also, that's a Micro Four Thirds camera. People also need to remember that owning a camera is a tactile experience. If you really, really wanted to just talk about photography, all you need is this. All you need is your iPhone or your Google phone, so that some of you don't get offended. Yeah. Or shoot film, man. I shoot a lot of film.
So you and the rest of the gear team, Hillary, Brittany as well. You've had a lot of gear pass through this year. We'll start with lenses. Which lens for you, if you can pick one off the top of your head, I know I'm putting you on the spot, has really kind of like, whoa, blown you away? Like this is something different.
In the past year?
Yeah, in 2021.
In 2021. I'm taking a look at what we've published. That I personally tested, or that everyone...
Let's start with what you've personally tested. What have you felt in your hand this year and been like, I don't want to return this?
There's more than one.
Okay.
You want me to only talk about one, or?
No, it's up to you. You know.
All right. I really adore the Fujifilm 18mm F14 Rlm WR. It's basically like a 28mm equivalent.
Yeah.
They got rid of the like push-pull focus mechanism.
Okay.
But they gave it really fast autofocus. It's incredibly sharp, and when you combine it with like the right profiles, it's beautiful. I did the first impressions. Brittany did the full review. We published it last month. It's overall a beautiful lens. Fairly small, fast to focus, weather sealed, sharp, beautiful bokeh.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a lot that you can hate about that. And, again, it's a 28mm. It's perfect for street.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hillary is actually considering buying one. Nikon made a 50mm f.95 lens. It's their third version for Leica M mount. And I put it on the SL2S with an adapter. I put it on an M mount camera, my M6. And I really adore the render that came out of it. Not too sharp, not too saturated. There's character. There are a bit of flaws, and there's really nice flare, but it's beautiful, and you can embrace it. And otherwise, you'd actually have to work a lot in post-production to get that look.
Okay.
Looking at the rest. We review so many lenses, dude.
So many.
Yeah, we genuinely do have the most lens reviews of any other photo publication out there. The Fujifilm 50f1 as well, too. That is the world's only autofocusing f1 lens. And it's gorgeous. And it renders because of the crop factor as like a 75mm f1.5. And that's like a classic focal length for like Leica or Zeiss people. So you can't really hit on that one. It's beautiful.
Do you think when we start getting down to f1, and do you think that's more of a novelty, or do you think there is actual need to get down to f1? Who's using that lens? Who wants to shoot at f1?
Portrait photographers,
Yeah.
anyone that wants to do a cinematic approach to event shooting and street photography.
Yeah.
I've talked about this often. I will sometimes do street with an 85, partially because I feel I get cinematic looking images out of it. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that, right? It's not like, because I'm also combining it with good ethics, right? You and I both written about this. It's not
Yeah.
like I'm sitting there, I'm being a creeper, I'm photographing that woman that just walked out past you and following her around the way that dude was.
I'm in an office space, so that there's a couple of people in a private office behind me.
Yeah, and hopefully none of them were sitting there trying to creep on that woman
No,
with an
no.
85mm lens. Yeah,
No, there's no creep.
yeah, exactly. So I don't want to do that. So I think that those types of photographers will like that stuff. It's really great for portraits as well too. I absolutely do think f1 and really fast apertures are needed for APS-C and Micro Four Thirds.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the only ways that they can majorly compete in terms of depth of field, and that's a major reason why you'd want to go medium format or full frame. You know, you see full frame lenses at f1.2, and they have autofocus, and you get this really wonderful render.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to do that with APS-C is to get really shallow lenses. Shallow aperture lenses, that is. But it doesn't really matter if you're not pixel peeping. There are other things that go into it then, like lens design, how they're polishing it, the aperture blades, other design factors that may give like soap bubble bokeh or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I totally do think it matters.
Yeah, I've shot with, I think, an f1.2. Has Fujifilm got an f1.2 56?
Yeah. I think you borrowed it when you were at my apartment.
Yeah, probably. And yeah, there's a certain skill that comes with shooting that, which I realized I didn't have, just by missing focus an awful lot. You know, I was trying to do some portraits and stuff like that. But I think also just from a technical standpoint, it's if you can get down to f1.2, f1, you know, it's a good challenge. You know, if you've not shot that before, because it's not just a case of maybe using an f1.8 or an f2 where, you know, you can nail focus pretty much all the time. It takes a kind of a trained hand. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah?
mean, most people. Let me grab a camera real quick.
Please.
Oh, come on! I believe in you. Come on. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Welcome back.
Yeah. So most people, when they shoot, and I know some of you might be listening to this, so I'll be very careful to, talk about exactly what I'm doing. When they shoot, they'll just shoot like this. So what I'm doing right now in this photo, you can still hear me, right?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Is I'm shooting, and I'm bringing the camera up to my eye, or I'm using it, and I'm using the LCD screen, and I'm bringing it away from my face, and my elbows are really just flailing about in the air, almost like, I'm like a baby puffin trying to leave the nest or something like that. My arms are going like this. That's not good form. Good form and, using lenses like that, you can't really just sit there and rely on image stabilization all the time. There is a point where the physics aren't really going to be capable.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to do is you have to practice good technique. And for anyone listening to this, it might be actually better to, pop onto our YouTube and check it out. But either way, what I'm doing right now is I'm tucking my elbows in. And I am holding the camera and cupping it with one hand around the lens and one hand around the grip. Some people like to do this, which is putting your thumb on the bottom and putting the four fingers around the top. That's perfectly valid.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely perfectly valid. Also, another good thing to do is to rotate the hand around and hold it that way. The main point is having good foundation, and that's having your elbows really tucked in. And when you're shooting with like a 50mm f1.2 lens like this, it's a lot easier to get things in focus and not really have issues with like camera shake or something like that if you just have a good foundation. Same thing with shooting vertically. Like, you see this one arm is up. It's almost like a baby puffin only has like one good wing instead of two. This is very natural to do. This is far better. So what I'm doing is instead is I tucked my elbow down.
Okay.
And then I rotated my body. I pivoted a bit. My left shoulder is forward. My right shoulder is back. And it's basically almost like I'm shooting a gun at this point. So that's how I would shoot, and that's how I'm more steady.
Excellent.
But a lot of people do not do that stuff necessarily. They try to sit there and just rely on things like image stabilization. Hopefully they're also doing the reciprocal rule of shutter speeds. A flash can help as well too, especially one with a fast flash duration.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing's gonna beat actually having the foundations there to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
You can't really sit there and take like a house that's on the riverside and put it on stilts and then put it in the sand and hope that, we're just gonna put more sand and it'll be fine. No, you gotta put it in like concrete and it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In terms of cameras, moving away from lenses, I know we do so many lenses, which is great. Camera-wise, in 2021, have you seen anything innovative? Anything that kind of was like, oh, they're trying something here? I mean, beyond what Nikon did with the design, I wasn't really seeing anything in terms of the productivity of what you can use with a camera that was, you know, kind of groundbreaking. Is there anything hardware wise that's really caught your attention this year?
Yeah, I'm looking through our archives right now. The Sony A1 is absolutely there. It's a 50 megapixel camera, shoots super incredibly fast. It's, I think, the first camera that can also do flash with an electronic shutter, and it can also do a faster sync speed even without needing to go to high-speed sync. So many different connectivity things built in. The build quality is okay. It's finally got that thing that Canon does where it brings the shutter down over the sensor. The menus are kind of a nightmare, though, not gonna lie. I think anyone I've talked to about those cameras are just like, yeah. And then they're like, yeah, but how are the menus? And it's like, it's not good, bro. I'm looking at what else was really released this year. The GFX 100S is the smallest image stabilized medium format camera with 100 megapixels in there. I think that's incredibly innovative. You know, when the GFX 100 came out, it had like the vertical grip, right?
Yeah.
And it was big, and we all thought, oh, okay, cool. It probably needs to be really, really big in order to actually like make this happen. Mm-hmm. Fujifilm outdid themselves. They're like, no, it didn't really have to be that way. This is what we did, and we made it really small, and we made it cheaper than the Sony A1. So there's great stuff there. Looking at the rest of our reviews,
how much is that retailing for the Fujifilm medium format?
I think it's like just under $6,000.
And that's, you know, for medium format. I know some people hear that figure and be like, $6,000, but that's, you know, quite affordable, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, the market for that kind of product.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of everything else you're getting, yeah.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the other things we have, could have sworn we published the Z6 II, unless we did that last year. Let me see if we have it scheduled. Do we have that scheduled? Those are mostly the things that are super innovative. Yeah, that's mostly about it, man.
That's great. I mean, what we'll do is as well, we'll put links to these innovative cameras and lenses that have passed through the Phoblographer's hands, and people can read the reviews. People can also go and purchase them. You know, it's a good time to treat yourself, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I like the way you say innovative.
I have actually, quick side off, I'm starting to adopt some American way of saying words. Who needs to say leisurely anymore? I'm all about leisurely. That is. I'm going with leisurely. I've taken that.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the British way is the right way.
No, I get that. I mean, like, I lost my accent for years, and I started to get it back, so I get you.
So, what can people expect on the site? Kind of some reviews to kind of keep an eye out for in the next weeks or months that you can share. That's not protected by an embargo or anything.
Yeah. We have. Let me take a look right now. So we don't have any cameras. We have a bunch that we're reviewing right now. But nothing is scheduled yet. As far as lenses go, the Panasonic 50mm f1.8. I bought this lens personally a while ago, and it's pretty fantastic. Honestly, it's weather sealed. It's small. It's lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good image quality. Like, it's everything every other manufacturer should be looking at and being like, oh, yeah, no, why didn't we do that? But instead, they're just not doing it in some way or another. Today is October 5th when we're recording this, and it'll be published the 6th at 12 a.m. Eastern, so like 12 hours from now, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we have coming up? And let me see camera bags. What do we have coming up in terms of camera bags? Morally Toxic is a brand new brand from the folks behind Three-Legged Thing, and they were very big and careful in the creation of their products.
Okay.
In that it's the same company, right? But like for legalities, they split it into two different companies.
Okay.
However, that company is very split in terms of gender. And they were purposely trying to make sure that every single person that worked at that company was very happy with the way that the bags fit. And we were talking about it amongst ourselves in like the Facebook chat that we have. And we were all saying certain things about the dividers and like whether or not we like the bag and stuff like that. I gave mine an editor's choice. I'm going to admit, like, I was a little selfish, and I knew that I was going to pick the one that I was going to like. Sorry, Hillary, I know you like backpacks more, but I was just like, I need another good backpack. Yeah. Hillary would probably very easily given this thing an editor's choice award. She did the what did she do? She did run the messenger bags, and she thought it was okay, but she had some problems. Brittany likes messenger bags more. She's gonna like that. I read her review a while ago. I forgot what she said. Faraz had similar findings with what we did. Let me see lighting. What do we have? What I am really excited about is we're one of the few publications that actually still reviews film.
Mm-hmm.
And recently we reviewed the Kono D-Light Art 100 film, and it's basically a tinted Ektar film that when you overexpose it, the effect goes away, but when you underexpose it, the effect is there. And I think that it can make it a little challenging to use, but it's still fun. I'm not blown away with it right now, but the way that I am with certain film emulsions, I'll say that, and then like a year later, I'll be like, man, I was an idiot for thinking that. This thing is beautiful. But with our Monolith film, Monolith 100, I adore it. It's beautiful. Like, there aren't very many 100 films that have like grain to it. They're all trying to like completely get rid of it. And you shoot film because you want that film look.
Exactly.
And it's there with this, and it's wonderful. And oh man, like inky black and white, it's beautiful. Let me look at what else.
It's interesting. I'm just gonna interject there. We've talked about gear a lot, obviously, throughout all of this show. That's the whole point. But I think that's the first time I've seen a really heightened level of passion when you're speaking about an analog camera. Do you think at your core, if you scrape through, the Nutella and the queensness within you, do you think film photography is what kind of really excites you?
I'm literally sitting here in silence trying to figure out and go through my own emotions with that. I think being able to be spontaneous and carefree is what excites me. And you know my little pink Fujifilm point and shoot, the Natura S. I had it at our 10th anniversary party.
I do remember that.
Yeah, that I adore because I can sit there, I can just take photos. I know they're going to be good. No one's taking it seriously. You know, all of the things of being like, oh, 5.6 at 1/125th and ISO 400, and we have to get the light at 1/16th power output. All that's gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's just there. It's beautiful. I don't have to sit there and just like look through the images. I know that I have to wait. So it returns me to the moment. And you know, it's not necessarily, film helps me do that, but it's not necessarily about film. The Fujifilm X Pro 3 really helps me do that because there's that special screen. The Leica M10D really helped me do that because obviously like Wi-Fi is built in and then you can like beam the images from the camera to your phone, but you're not really going to sit there like paying attention to it. I have this joke I do with film cameras. Hold on. So like, I'm gonna pretend to take a photo of you right now with my M6 and be like, man, look at that. That looks beautiful. Look at that right there.
That does look beautiful.
Yeah, it's dark like my soul.
That.
Yeah. For those of you that, you know, you're listening to the podcast, I'm thinking about like just taking a photo and then showing them the back of the camera. And usually there would be a screen there in digital, but there isn't a screen. There's just like an ISO dial.
Yeah.
And it's a facetious joke, don't get me wrong. But yeah. More about being in the moment. Whatever keeps me in the moment and doesn't remove me from it really is what's more exciting to me. And technically any camera can do that, you know, like a Canon in aperture priority or Sony in aperture priority or something like that. But it's more than that, right? It's also keeps me in the moment and I don't have to worry about it at all later. And Fujifilm and Leica really helped me do that. Canon with some tweaks helped me do that, and Sony with some tweaks helped me do that. But that's really what I'm about, man. I'm really just about like living life and celebrating life. You know, like I've had a couple near-death experiences. I almost died a couple years ago when I had really bad pneumonia. Mm-hmm. Every time it happens, like I just think about more like life, like appreciating it, like. There are people who are sitting there like constantly mired in anxiety about wanting to do this one thing. And, you know, I read this quote the other day that there are a lot of people who died whose life was cut very short, who probably up there, you know, somewhere in the ethos, like, you know, depending on what religion you believe in or you don't believe in anything, their souls or whatever's left of them are probably laughing at the fact that you're just sitting there so nervous when you only have one life. What's the point? Like, do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you decided to pick up and leave the UK. You came to America, and then you were like, you know what? I'm going to go to Latin America and all that kind of stuff. Like, there are things... Obviously, I'm not telling people to be reckless. And bringing it all back to cameras, obviously, don't be reckless with your purchases.
Yeah.
But get something that lets you stay in the moment and lets you continue to be in the moment and enjoy it later on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And while you're saying that, I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of smartphone photography, which I'm not against, but I think that's probably a style or a tool that makes you not be in the moment because, you know, you're going around with your iPhone or your Google, whatever, and, you know, you're constantly dealing probably with notifications from socials and stuff. And, you know, then you may be getting a call coming through, a text message. And it's like, that's why for me, I will never, ever move on to smartphone cameras as a main driver. One, because the quality is not there in terms of a dedicated camera. And two, it doesn't let you be in the moment. It doesn't let you forget about all the nonsense that's going on in the world. You know, there's that constant reminder of notifications. And I think you're right. Film photography, and obviously what Leica did and what Fuji have done with being able to, it was the X Pro 3, and I think they do it on the X-T4, where you can swivel the screen around so you don't have to have that immediate kind of playback. And it lets you just enjoy photography. And I think a lot of people, especially in the digital world with Instagram and Facebook, have forgotten that the most important part is the process of making the images. That's the fun bit, you know, going out on those long photo walks, going to lands or areas that you've not been, or even just seeing parts of your local area, you know, that you may have lived in your whole life. But the camera and the process of making the images lets you see it differently and lets you see things that you may have not seen before. And I think, I think you're right. There's something to be said that we need to be more connected to that rather than the end product or the immediate feedback. Just enjoy making photos and find a camera that kind of coincides with that. Find a camera that feels good and right for you. Because going back to what you said with what Hillary did, you know, images, of course there are differences, but they're all so close now because of the technology that they're accessible. The patented pinky is coming back, just for our people listening. And, you know, it's so difficult to, at times, for the untrained eye to differentiate between cameras that, you really have to find the one that suits your needs and that makes you happy in a way.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I didn't think Hillary would go with Fujifilm. She hasn't made the purchase yet, but I was sitting there talking with her, and she was like, would I be downgrading by going to APS-C? And I'm like, no, not necessarily so. And she didn't think so either. You know, she did the blind taste test with us.
Before I had the X-T2, I was using the Nikon D610 full frame camera. I like that camera, but the images and that's full frame, the images that I get on my Fuji, which is cropped, is for me just not, you know, the Nikon D610 is not even on a par. Beautiful images, but just, you know, the aesthetic isn't what excites me on the Nikon, on the full frame, the DSLRs, compared to the mirrorless Fujis. So, I think the question of, am I going to downgrade, or am I going to be missing out on something if I go from full frame to crop is, I think eventually it's a question that we need to stop asking.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think a couple of generations are going to have to die out first in order for that to happen.
Us included, unfortunately.
I don't really think it's going to be... I think we're going to be the start. But like Gen X, who's older than us, I think a lot of them are starting to understand it. They're just very torn about it. Yeah, man, no, I agree with you. I also think that, like, it's great for them to use it for marketing. I mean, every time we see presentations, they're all talking about, like, MTF charts and, like, pixel peeping and all that stuff. But, like, no one really actually does that. And just because you do that doesn't mean you're a good photographer. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can sit there and, like, satisfy an algorithm. Like, I don't know how many people would sit there and, like, do nothing else but pixel peep to satisfy an Instagram or TikTok algorithm. It sounds idiotic to me.
Waste of time. Waste of time.
No, absolutely. How it's going to make you a better photographer or a better content creator, I feel like those are more important things. And how it's going to make your job simpler, and, like, you know, there's the other idea, and, like, you're kind of hitting on it a little bit, and, you know, I've hit on it, and Hillary and Brittany have hit on it. We don't need to sit there grinding away all day and all night just to get a better photo. But that's what photography has been made for us. To sit there and give you the most clean image possible, the most clean slate to start with. So you can sit there and do all the work that you want in post-production. But we don't want that anymore. You know, we want to be able to sit there, shoot a photo or a couple photos in a shoot, maybe do, like, a little bit of editing like you were talking about, and then get back to living our lives.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to sit there and grind away. Like, people are literally leaving their jobs because they're sick of the grind.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be doing it in your hobby life either. Like, it'll probably apply to, like, video games after a while, too, man. Like, there were games that were, like, you sit there and you grind away for hours and hours just to get these one things, and it's like, man, this is anxiety-inducing. Why would I do this?
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm bored, but, like, there are so many better things that you can do in photography than just sitting there in front of a computer editing your life away.
Completely agree.
Yeah, you can sit there and interacting with your subjects and telling them how to pose.
Make more photos, go out on the streets, do a project, you know, there's so many things you can be doing.
Or explore another hobby, you know? Like,
yeah.
I do yoga, I do Pilates, like, just sometimes I go do random things as well, too. Like, I know someone that does pottery.
Mm-hmm.
Go exploring, you know? Like, whatever. Like, get your life back.
Yeah. Well, talked about a lot today, and there's going to be a lot of great information for anyone listening or watching this. We will put links down below to some of the gear that we've mentioned. So if you feel like treating yourself or you want to treat someone else, you know, now's the time. We're pointing you in the right direction, and you just need to see what's right for you. Mr. Gampat, do you have anything? I know you're very busy, so I won't keep you imprisoned in this podcast anymore, but is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
Pay attention to what we have coming in the next 2 months. Very low-key. Should I even mention them? Yeah, I guess. We're working on an insurance plan to help photographers out. Not going to mention the specifics of it right now, but basically, we've seen a lot of problems with, like, warranties and stuff like that, and I'm just like, no, we're going to find a way to fix this. So I'm working with a company to really try to fix it.
Excellent.
And another thing, you saw it as well as the rest of the staff, we're working on NAP. And there will be a couple cool goodies coming when it comes out.
Excellent.
Yeah, probably not immediately, but you'll see. So yeah, that's really about it.
Chris Gampat, our editor-in-chief. Oh, perfect timing. My camera's just said, hey, we've had enough.
Yeah.
The editor-in-chief, the Nutella connoisseur. Thank you very much for sitting down and speaking with me.
Hold on.
And the patented pinky as well.
And the patented pinkies, yes, exactly. Thanks a lot for having me, Dan. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work you do here, and the fact that we're trying to put as many POCs and women out there is fantastic.
Absolutely. Cheers, Chris.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks again to our editor-in-chief, Chris Gampat, for joining me on this week's episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. If there's any pieces of gear, any lenses, cameras, accessories that piqued your interest, then we do have links down in the description below where you can go and purchase them. Treat yourself. Treat somebody else. It's the perfect time to add to your photographic arsenal. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Inside the Photographer's Mind. And remember, guys, if you are liking it, then please do subscribe. Please share it, hit a comment, hit a like. We want to hear from you, and then more people can enjoy this wonderful photography-fueled podcast. See you next time.